My metric number is 264609. I will start the group presentations with introduction. First is the main characters. So in this case too, the main characters is Mr. Abu. He is one of the tender boards at ABBA Municipal Council and he has been on board for 5 years. So what is tender board? So a tender board is a committee or institutions involved in the government's procurement procedure. It formulates requirements for the intended purchase of goods or services, compile these formulations in a tender document, and hands these documents out to interested suppliers, mainly for the fee. So after the closing date for bids, the tender boards will evaluate the proposals received and decide on the awarding of the tender. So public sector organizations like ABBA Municipal Council are usually legally obliged to release tenders for works and services. Next is the supporting characters. So the first supporting character here is Datuk Zainan. So he is the president of ABBA Municipal Council. He always stressed that he wanted the tender to follow the prescribed rules as stipulated in government's procedure. And he also always remind the tender board to maintain the good name of the council and to stay away from corruptions. The second supporting character is Mr. Chow. So Mr. Chow is the successful contractor which has been awarded with few big projects beforehand. So he aimed for the tender project released by ABBA Municipal Council, and for now he has very strong connections with Mr. Abu. I will continue with the underlying issue. The first key issue here is Mr. Abu is in dilemma whether to speak the truth or hiding the fact regarding his wrongdoings during the procurement of assets under a tender to purchase compactor. So here is the issue, the procurement audit findings. So according to the audit findings of the ABBA Municipal Councils on 250 procurement samples, there were several issues connected to regulatory compliance and procurement planning that could jeopardize the government interest. So one of the highlighted issues was non-compliance with procurement specification, such as not adhering to the agreed open time frame in which the compactor supply did not meet the specifications specified in the agreement. So in this case, Mr. Abu is the one who is in charge this tender to purchase compactors because he is the one who awarded the tender to Mr. Chow's company. The next issue is the accepting bribery. Before the tender document submission deadlines, Mr. Abu had many courtesy visits from a few contractors, including Mr. Chow, and he also received surprise gift from the contractor. The peak was reached when Mr. Abu received a lavish gift from Mr. Chow as a gratitude for assisting his company in winning the bidding for compactors worth 3 million. So this is definitely an act of receiving bribes for the acquisitions of government assets over compactor tender. When a person receives gratifications, he is supposed to report it to the nearest officer of the commissions or police officer. The second key issue here is the lack of faithfulness in the procurement process of assets in the public sector that leads to some weaknesses related to compliance with regulations. The first issue is not faithful with the procurement process. So it seems that for the compactor tenders, the council had neglected some of the guidelines in the procurement process. So it can be shown as below. First, to enable fair, just, and independent review of the tenders, the tenders documents will be assigned a serial number and the names of bidders will be deleted. Given that Mr. Abu easily awarded the compactor tender to Mr. Chow companies, it demonstrated that the tenders documents are not assigned a serial number and the names of bidders are not removed, as Mr. Abu could clearly discern that the tender document was Mr. Chow's. Second, the evaluation committees that will analyze all tenders are generally composed of 2 independent committees, the Technical Committee and the Financial Evaluation Committee. So this tender evaluation report will subsequently be presented for considerations and decisions to the procurement boards of ministry or departments. So tenders will be chosen based on general procurement principles, predetermined criteria, and final review. So the agency procurement board will review all tenders. However, for the compactor tenders, it was revealed that Mr. Abu, a member of the tender board, was assigned to evaluate the tenders rather than 2 independent committees that should do so. So Mr. Abu was in charge of reviewing and evaluating documents, so he could easily overlook all other tenders except for Mr. Chow's and directly awarded the tender to Mr. Chow. I will continue with the analysis of this case. So the fraud triangle is a framework designed to explain the reasoning behind an employee's decisions to commit workplace fraud. So there are 3 stages categorized by the effect on the individual that can be summarized as pressure, opportunity, and rationalization. Okay, the step 1 is the pressure on the individual. It is a motivation motivations behind the crime and can be either personal financial pressure, such as debt problems, or workplace debt problems, such as a shortfall in revenue. So this pressure is seen by the individual as unsolvable by orthodox, legal, sanctioned rules, or unshareable with others who may be able to offer assistance. So a common example of the perceived unshareable financial problem is gambling debt. Maintenance of a lifestyle is another common example. Okay, so in this case, Mr. Abu, as the breadwinner, is responsible for financially supporting his family as well as his siblings. Given the high living costs and his family's lavish lifestyle, his financial capability is insufficient. He even had to seek a loan from Ahlum to maintain his financial circumstances. But in the end, he felt pressure on how to settle the debts, and his health deteriorated as a result of this pressure. Step 2. The opportunity to commit fraud is the means by which the individual will defraud the organization. So in this stage, the worker sees a clear course of actions by which they can abuse the positions to solve their perceived unshareable financial in a way that they is able to solve the problems in secret is the key to the perceptions of a viable opportunity. So in this case, Mr. Abu is in positions to commit corrections because he is a member of the tender committee, which is in charge of reviewing and evaluating the tender document. So he will be the one who need to choose which business will be granted the tender. So if he awards the tender to this one bidding company, he will also earn attractive rewards such as commissions, business trip, and luxury item that will help him in overcome the pressure. Next is the step 3, the ability to rationalize the crime. So this is the final stage in the fraud triangle. It is a cognitive stage and requires the fraudster to be able to justify the crime in a way that is acceptable to his or her internal moral compass. So in this case, Mr. Abu rationalized committing fraud because of his own greed and wild desire to live luxuriously. And given that no one will be aware of the situations and there will be no evidence that he is the perpetrator, so Mr. Abu made the decisions to conduct fraud with confidence. So at the end, I can conclude that for one to be able to commit fraud, he or she need to have these 3: pressure, opportunity, and rationalizations in order to commit the fraud.
Assalamualaikum and a very good day to everyone. My name is Amrina binti HASBULLAH and my metric number is 264953. So my part, I will continue with the rules and regulation regarding procurement process in local government related with the case of Mr. Abu. Rule and regulation regarding procurement process. So with the procurement guideline where it explains about the requirement for tender documents, the process of evaluating and selecting of the tenders. First is a tender document where it explains about general and terms and conditions, specification, a copy of agreement, a price plan, delivery duration, operation period, and the expected scope of work in their tender document. And related with the case, Mr. Abu is the one who is going to receive the report for the tender document. And for a certain situation where he only received a call from a binding company that offer a reasonable price and indicating there is no non-official or paperwork was presented. And the company also promised commission, business vacation, and luxury thing as a reward if he assists them to approving their request or approve their tender document. Second is the evaluation of tenders, where there is 2 bodies committee that are responsible in evaluating all the tenders submitted, which is the Technical Evaluation Committee and the Financial Evaluation Committee that in charge of evaluating a project based on criteria outlined in the tender document. And then the tender evaluation report will be forwarded to the Ministry or Department Procurement Board, Agency Procurement Board for discussion and selection of the best tender. And related with the case Mr. Abu, where he is the one of the committee member board that are going to have the responsibility and authority in a review and then selecting the best tender. But as we know, after he always receives a gift from a binding company that in order to get and help from Mr. Abu for them to get approve their tender. Lastly is the process of selection of successful vendor. So in this process, overall procurement principles predetermine the criteria and higher evaluation will be used to choose tenders. And then the agency procurement boards are responsible for reviewing all the tenders. And if the tender value exceeds 100 million ringgit data for work, and 15 delivery data for suppliers and services, the tender will be referred to Ministry of Finance for final approval with the suggestion of the Agency Procurement Board. And as we can relate with the case of Mr. Abu, as we know, he is one of the committees in the board that has the opportunity and authority to select the best tender based on his choice and the budget. But we can estimate, or we can assume that he might not do that, and he might do some involvement, and he might change the data and the evaluation of the tender based on his choice, because he already got lots of kick and pressure from other binding company that are actually request for his help to get approval for their tender. So this is the act that explains about the correction, which is the clause on correction in government procurement document, where it explains about the act for someone who do a correction in the company, then they might get the termination of their work. So this is my last part for the explanation, which is causes of correction and fraud for our issue number 1. Our first issue is unethical conduct, where Mr. Abu has get involved with the corruption and fraud in his company. So we use the fraud triangle model in order to identify the causes. So the first element in fraud triangle model is the pressure. So we have identified the first causes under pressure of Mr. Abu is burden of debt, where he got into where he involved with the illegal lender of loan, and then he cannot manage to pay back all the loan payment. And second is because of after his wife has laid off from her work, then Mr. Abu is the one who being the source of money for of his family and also his family at hometown. The second element under fraud triangle model is the opportunity. So the opportunity that we can say is Mr. Abu being one of the member of the ABBA Municipal Council Tender Committee for 5 years. So we can assume that he got lots of experience in handling all the tender documents. And second is Mr. Abu is an experienced individual in handling the duty of checking tender documents and evaluating all the documents and involved with the process of selection of tender. And lastly, the element of rationalization that we use to identify the causes of Mr. Abu involved with the corruption is because of his personally think about his responsibility in supporting his family and also his family at their hometown. And second is because he might think that he in debt with all the binding company that give him a gift and concern. So he still in debt, and that is the reason why he got involved with the corruption. And that is all from me. Thank you.
My name is Siti ZULAIKHA binti Abdul Rashid 265039, and I will continue with the issue number 2, weaknesses in the procurement process. The cause is first, lack of policy and procedure regarding the procurement process. Based on the case, it explains that ABBA Municipal Council doesn't have a proper policy and procedure in the procurement process. The policies and procedure are an essential part of any organization, especially in the public sector activities. Together, policies and procedure provide a roadmap for every stage of the procurement process. They ensure compliance with law and regulation and guidance for decision making and streamline internal processes. However, Mr. Abu dared to receive the bribery from the supplier because there was no policy that disallowed employee from giving and accepting gift. Having the right policy and procedure in place create the operational framework and ensure compliance with any related law and regulations. In short, due to the absence of the policy and procedure, employees including Mr. Abu unable to understand the organization standard for acceptable conduct and performance. And the second, which caused the weaknesses, is a lack of internal control. A good internal control is essential to ensuring the accomplishment of goal and objective. They ensure compliance with no applicable law and regulation to avoid the risk of public scandal. As we know that the goal of ABBA Municipal Council is to ensure that the tenders follow the prescribed rule as stipulated in the government procedure. Yet, Mr. Abu committed fraud because there was no internet control such as segregation of duty in the procurement process of asset. Mr. Abu was the one who involved in the reviewing and evaluating tender. As the result, fraud occurred in the procurement process.
Hi, my name is Amrina Rasyada binti Ismail. My metric number is 264523. I will continue our group presentation on alternative solution. So for the first issue, our group has suggested that in order to prevent Mr. Abu from committing fraud, ABBA Municipal Council should create a culture of honesty, openness and assistance in the organisation. In order to create this culture, the organisation should hire honest people at the first place, create a positive work environment by having a well-defined code of conduct, and provide an employee assistance program that helps employees deal with their personal pressures and problems. By creating this culture, it will support a better teamwork and productivity among employees and increase their sense of loyalty against the organisation. Hence, they will not commit a fraud. However, a positive culture doesn't promise a low fraud environment, because when people are having financial difficulties, they tend to find a shortcut to solve their problem. Okay, the second solution is robust internal control. Internal controls like segregation of duties should be implemented to protect assets, ensure accurate information and evaluation, hence deter corruption and bribery. For example, Mr. Abu reviews the tender document and then ABBA assign another person to verify the document. By implementing segregation of duties, it can minimize the occurrence of errors and fraud by ensuring that no employees has the ability to commit fraud in the normal course of their duties. The benefit is it can provide an early detection of error and fraud. However, it is costly in terms of time, effort and resources. Okay, for the last solution, we would like to suggest that the ABBA Municipal Council should eliminate the opportunities. The organisation can eliminate opportunities by discouraging collusion between employees and suppliers and clearly informing them and other outside contacts about the company's policies against fraud, and monitoring red flag employees. Who are the red flag employees? Red flag employees usually refers to the one who close to supplier, live beyond their means and have a debt problem. This solution can reduce the opportunities among employees from receiving bribes and able to spot the employees who have a potential to commit fraud. Okay, now we move to the second issue. In order to solve the lack of efficiency in the procurement process, ABBA Municipal Council should establish the right culture. A positive work environment can prevent employee fraud and theft. There should be a clear organisation culture and structure, written policies and procedures, and fair employment practice. For example, Datuk Zainal should remind his employee to follow principles such as accountability, transparency, value for money, and also fairness. However, not everyone can follow the policies and procedures. It can be proved when Datuk Zainal already highlighted transparency, fairness, effectiveness, efficiency, and economic value in the meeting, but Mr. Abu still commit the fraud. Okay, for the second solution, we suggest that ABBA Municipal Council should assess internal control. Mr. Abu dared to commit fraud because he was confident that his action would not be known by his superiors. So, a segregation of duties during the procurement process is a must. According to the tender procurement process, there are two committees that involve, which are technical and financial evaluation committees. Hence, ABBA needs to set up those two committees and segregate all the duties and roles among the different members. Besides, to enable fair, just and independent evaluation of tenders, all tenders should be accorded a serial number and the name of the bidders should be omitted. This is to ensure that every stage of procurement tender process is fair and free from any improper influence. Okay, for the last solution, we suggest that ABBA Municipal Council should develop a written agreement with suppliers and employees. ABBA Municipal Council should ensure that contractors and suppliers sign an acknowledgement of compliance during the submission of the tender document. This is to educate that contractors and suppliers about the organization's code of conduct, ethical stance on fraud and corruption. Besides, the organization should ensure that all staff and all their members provide a conflict of interest declaration to avoid any factors such as family, friendship, financial or social factors could compromise his or her judgment, decision or action in the workplace.
Recommended solutions. So for issue number 1, we recommend to create a culture of honesty, openness and assist the organizations. Communication represents a key factor in keeping a workplace free from the rumor, negativity and dishonesty. We allow employees to voice concern, offer ideas and seek counsel without the fear of punishment or defensive reactions. Employees do not make mistakes from time to time. Ask employees to make necessary parties aware of mistakes as soon as possible without the fear of negative consequences. This will encourage the staff to keep the concept of honesty alive by allowing them to correct mistakes without promoting dishonesty. By practicing culture of honesty and openness, Mr. Abu will have courage to tell the truth about his wrongdoing during reviewing the tender document and accept his punishment. Even if we strengthen the internal control, we do not foster honesty in the workplace, no gain will be achieved. For example, if we enhance internal control, but we have not fostered in Mr. Abu the trait of honesty, he can still lie while drafting a report to Mr. Zainal. If we apply the nature of honesty, Mr. Abu will tell the mistake he made. For the issue number 2, we recommend to assess the internal control. Segregation of duty during procurement process is a must to reduce the possibility of major public sector tender evaluator being bribed. A wide pool of evaluators should be available from which computer generated random and the secret selection can be made at a relative short notice for a specific project. When there is a segregation duty, it can increase the faithfulness in the procurement process of assets. In the public sector, the risk of permanent evaluator or small number of evaluators selected a long time in advance is tender will know whom to bribe or may bribe all the possible evaluators, or evaluator may solicit a bribe or arrange for the related party to tender for a project which he knows he will be evaluating. ABBA municipal should make a control. For example, the evaluator, Mr. Abu, should have no ability to make a direct or indirect contact with the tenderer during the evaluation process. Even if the ABBA municipal established the right culture by practicing the code of conduct, not everyone will follow the code of conduct. We can see that Datuk Zainal always reminds his employee for a few times to follow the rule, but Mr. Abu still commit the corruptions. We think that the assets internal control can increase faithfulness in the procurement process of assets in the public sector. And that's all from our group. Thank you.